Okay, so it finally arrived. The Zwift Play is now in my possession. Got it this morning. Let's go ahead and do a quick unboxing. And inside the box, we got a Zwift sticker. Pretty cool. Probably use that somewhere. And then inside the box itself, whoa, pull that open. 2 controllers. Kind of an interesting way of packaging those, but okay. 2 controllers, and then we got the charging cable and what looks like some shims for the bar in case we have especially small handlebars, which I don't think we'll need in this case, but we'll keep those. And then the charging cable, from what I've heard, is pretty slick because it consists of 1 USB plug, but then branches out to 2 USB-C chargers. So when we need to charge these, and the charging port is just right here, we can charge them pretty easily, and even both of them at the same time. And since they'll probably run out of battery at the same time if we're using them both, that should be a pretty awesome feature. Okay, pretty basic charging cable, and then the 2 controllers themselves. We have a little label here. You can see this one says R for right, and then L for left, so they'll go on the handlebars like so. And then once they're on, we will be able to control our bike inside the Zwift virtual world. So let's go ahead and put them on the bike and test this out. We've got, once again, the right-hand side, which will go here, and then the left-hand side over here. Once we put these on, it's actually quite easy. I'm not sure if you can see pretty clearly here, but there's just this gummy strap that wraps around and connects on that other side. Pretty straightforward. And that will hopefully fit pretty nicely on our handlebars. So I'm trying to fit it, if you can see, directly below the brake system. It looks like that will fit pretty well. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, the right-hand side, hopefully make them level. And there we go. Okay, so you can see probably on this camera a little bit better, there's really barely a finger pad's width between my actual brakes and the Zwift controllers. The good news is the really quick release system they have means when I'm ready to go out for a ride, it's pretty straightforward to take them right off, put them right back on when I'm ready to Zwift, which I love because I only have the 1 bike, so I take this off when I go out for outside rides, which means I'll need that to be pretty quick release when I'm ready to go. Well, it's been about 3 weeks since I first got these Zwift Play controllers, and so it seemed like a good time to finalize my review and tell all of you what I think about the platform and these new controllers in general. Well, let's first get them off the bike. Okay, so here I have both of the controllers, and to be honest, I really like them. I think moving from an Apple TV remote to these controllers is a huge step in the right direction, and I really like that Zwift has come out with them. Now, my overall review being positive, I will say the $129 price is really pushing it. I think for $99 it does make sense. It's a better controller with additional functionality, and I really like the fact that even though it's a beta launch that they have right now, the software is something that can improve, even though it seems to have all the necessary hardware to work well. It even has haptic feedback in some of the research that I did that is not yet implemented, that they plan to implement in future versions based on the feedback from the initial users. So let's first talk about all of the things that I really like about these controllers. The first one being steering. So I haven't had the luxury of using a steering platform besides these controllers, but I will say they were really easy to use. Now, when you first start using them, you think that this button's a little bit too difficult to press, or the haptic just isn't quite there. But after you start using it for a little bit, you recognize that they are actually quite sensitive, so you don't have to push them too hard in order to get that feedback, that result. It's something that I got used to really quickly on the road, and you really don't have to put much effort into it. You almost think about turning, and if your finger's in the right spot, then you'll start to turn, which is awesome. You push in to brake and out to turn. Now, if I'm in a race, my big concern was that I was accidentally gonna be hitting the brakes when I meant to turn and get confused and lose a bunch of watts in speed and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, that did not happen. It is pretty straightforward to keep your finger on the outside so that you're only pressing on the steering section and you're only, going in the direction that you want to. Accidentally hitting the brakes is not something that I did. In fact, I don't know if I used the brakes at all in actual riding besides in just testing, because I would usually just go out to the menu if I wanted to stop to repair devices and things like that, and that will hit the brakes for you anyway. Now, this button on the side, it increases and decreases intensity, and that's really all it's used for right now. As I mentioned, a lot of the button mappings are things that can change over time as Zwift learns more about how people want to use their platform. but right now it's really only used to increase and decrease intensity during a workout. It's not something that I know that I need a dedicated button to do. I think that might be a little bit overkill, and I think there are better uses specifically for those side buttons. Another thing that I liked is the fact that you have 8 different buttons you can use. A navigation button is super useful to really replace a remote and what I was using in the past. And then all of these additional buttons can be mapped to cool things, like the Z button. If you hold it down, you give a ride-on bomb to everyone around you. I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever even used a ride-on bomb because it's just too complicated in the app. I've honestly had people ride past me. I was like, man, really wish I could give that guy kudos, but I'm not gonna mess with my remote to potentially ruin my whole workout in order to give this guy kudos. So it never really happened. But with this, it's so much easier to do, and it's really straightforward. The buttons make sense, the way you use them, A, to select things, B, to go back. You know, it's very straightforward, and I really like that they did it that way. I, for one, am very interested to see what they do with these buttons in the future, if double tapping a button or holding down a button does different things than it does right now, but I do think they gave themselves a lot of potential with having all the different buttons that they include right off the bat. Now, the hardware itself is not going to change whether it's in beta or not once it finally gets fully released in public with all of its new features, but they have all the hardware that they need to then subsequently update the software, the buttons, and all those things as necessary. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the things that I did not like about this system. Now, one of those right off the bat is the fact that it takes 2 connections to use. And if you're one who uses an Apple TV like myself, you have to use your 2 connections very wisely because that's all you get. The remote takes a connection, and then you've got your bike, and maybe you want a heart rate monitor, then you're tapped out. If you want to use a separate power meter, if you want to use a separate cadence meter, you're just out of luck because you only get 2, and that's the maximum. Now with these, if you were to use both of them, then, well, you've already hit your max. You can't even connect your bike anymore. So you have to use the companion app in order to pair the Bluetooth devices, which I had a little bit of a problem with. It didn't work perfectly right off the bat, but I eventually figured it out, you know, being in tech and whatnot. And it went more smoothly after that, and it started to connect a little bit more automatically in the future. I got used to using the companion app for it. But if it's not something you're interested in, or you don't want to use your companion app, or you don't have a compatible phone, that could be a problem, so keep that in mind. Each one of these takes its own Bluetooth connection. I did try and connect just one and just connect the other one, and it just does not work. None of the functions work as you expect them to. Maybe that's something they'll do in the future if you want to be able to race with just one and just click the buttons you want to, or if one of them dies halfway through a ride, that's something you might want to look into. But for now, it does not work properly if you only connect to one device, or at least it didn't for me. Now, the main concern that I had with these, and again, I think it's a great platform, but the way that it's connected to the bike, the most support that you have is right on the front next to the steering and the brake and the intensity adjustment buttons. There's not a lot of support on the actual platform that you're clicking on, the direction pad, or the A, B, Z, Y buttons. Now, the issue with that is that these are the buttons you're actually pressing with your thumb, and they're not very easy to press. They actually do take a significant amount of force, which is a good thing. You don't want to accidentally be clicking stuff during a race, so I can understand that. But there's not a lot of physical support underneath that platform connected to the handlebar. So when you're pushing the button, it does have a certain amount of give underneath it. So you're pushing the actual unit down while you're pushing the button. And that does get a little bit annoying, but I'm sure it's something I'll get used to over the months of using this platform. So all in all, as I mentioned, I really think it's a great addition to the Zwift platform. I think it's something that many people will enjoy using, especially as more and more gamification is added into Zwift, and they're continuing to add new things like new games with steering and more potentially exciting things that you can do with power-ups and different ways to turn it even more into a video game than it already is, which I think is really cool. I do think if you can still grab these for $99, and if you're watching this video when it comes out, that probably still will be the case, but either way, I'll leave a link down below with the current price of these Zwift Play controllers, and hopefully you enjoy them as much as I do, and I'll see you in the next video.